I was sent this text yesterday. Is that Governor Patrick Morrisey and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will be in Martinsburg tomorrow. They're here for a press conference to discuss food diet legislation and changes to the SNAP benefits program. The Berkeley County Democrats, the Jefferson County Democrats, and the Morgan County Democrats are going to stage a protest rally to support SNAP. That's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And any cuts to this program harms hungry children, this text says. The Dems are meeting at 9:30 on Friday at 108 East Stevens Street, Martinsburg. The protest rally will start at 10 a.m. in front of St. Joe's Catholic Church at 235 South Queen Street, Martinsburg. That was forwarded to me. I forward it to you as we bring in Delegate Michael Pushkin now on the program. Mike is out of Kanawha, the 54th district, and is the state Democratic Party chair. Mike, good morning. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on. I hope the prosecutor didn't leave on my account.
You're not being investigated, are you?
Not to my knowledge.
All right, so that eliminates
not in that county.
that eliminates putting you in double jeopardy. So that clearly wasn't the reason then there.
Okay, maybe he really did have an appointment.
Mike, let's talk about the vaccine vote that went down. All the Democrats voted against it, and indeed a majority of Republicans voted against it too. A tight majority, but a majority nevertheless. Tell me why you think that vote failed.
Well, first and foremost, I think it's because the vast majority of West Virginians do not want to see a weakening of childhood immunization laws. And we received more phone calls and emails over that particular bill than any other bill so far this session. I know, it was a top priority of Governor Morrisey, and he still has this executive order out there, but the vast majority of people wanted to see that bill go down. They don't want us to weaken childhood immunization laws, especially when we're hearing of measles outbreaks in many states who have gone down this road. I think a lot of states are regretting some of the laws that they've passed to weaken their childhood immunization laws now. And, it's rare that you can say West Virginia has led the way in something, but as far as our public health laws concerning childhood immunizations, we have, and we haven't had those problems here. And I'm not sure why we would invite those problems here. It was a bipartisan opposition to one of the governor's top priorities for whatever reason. And I'm glad that the bill went down. I think most of the people in this state agree with me on that.
Is that the death of that bill for this legislative year?
I would say nothing is dead until midnight on the the last night of session, and of course, according to the governor, he's threatening the legislature with all sorts of special sessions on the taxpayers' dime. But I would advise him, if he would listen to my advice, which I think he should, I would advise him not to call us in for a special session over that and put the taxpayers on the hook for something that the vast majority of them don't want. And I would go further to say he should listen to the people on this and rescind his executive order. The people don't want this. It's not what they voted for. He didn't run on making measles great again. I watched the debate. I watched his commercials. There wasn't anything about relaxing childhood immunization laws. This is not what people voted for.
Mike, this is John. Good morning. The second time you mentioned the executive order, what is the effect of the executive order?
Well, it orders the state Bureau for Public Health to a different way of reviewing these. I think that it basically opens up the exemptions for childhood immunizations, where we've had fairly strict laws, which most people agree with. This would open up the process more for more exemptions, because it's the State Bureau for Public Health that approves, under current law, that's who approves the medical exemptions that are allowed. However, I would say that something that's concerning to me, and it came out during the hearing on this, is the state currently doesn't have a public health officer. I can't remember a time where we didn't have a public health officer. And the last three public health officers who served in the Justice Administration, they all signed a letter opposing the bill. And there is no current state public health officer. And then the governor issues this executive order really tying the hands of the Bureau for Public Health. And there's not a doctor running the show over there right now, which is concerning.
So does the executive order accomplish what the legislation attempted to do but was shot down? I mean,
I think that it does in some aspects, But it's an executive order. It was done unilaterally, where you put it up to a vote in the people's house, and it went down in bipartisan fashion. So the governor should take heed of that and rescind his dangerous executive order. I don't think if it's the other way around, if it's a Democratic governor who was trying to rule by executive order and ignoring the legislature, that would be an issue, wouldn't it? So that's what he's doing, is trying an end around on the legislature, which we make the laws. The legislatures we're the ones that make the laws, and he's trying to legislate from the governor's office.
So what was the mood on the floor on that Monday when it got shot down?
Well, I think it was defiance of this top priority of the governor. And I think it was a lot of relief for a lot of folks in West Virginia who, again, did not want to see us weaken childhood immunization laws. So I'm glad that it went down. Like I said, it obviously went down in bipartisan fashion, and it's because the people wanted us to vote it down.
Another of the governor's priorities, certificate of need, did not survive.
It did not either. You're correct. I think that most people, I don't think that's an issue that a lot of people talk about around the kitchen table about certificate of need. It mainly involves, the hospital association and other healthcare providers. I do understand both sides of it. I think one of the main reasons that bill went down is because of the governor's management style, and him being a bit heavy-handed with some of the members of the Republican caucus.
You bring this up, Mike, and I'm glad you did, because I've heard rumors and whispers of this, that the governor has alienated members of the legislature with some of the ways he has handled the legislature in trying to coax legislation through. Can you give us any examples of what you're aware of?
Just what I've seen. I mean, on that night when the bill to remove the requirement for a certificate of need, when that died in committee, I saw a lot of unhappy faces. Now, I'm not back there in the Republican caucus, and I wasn't getting called back into the room where the governor had set up shop to, browbeat and threaten people. I wasn't in the room. I think he knew how I was going to vote. But I saw a lot of people who felt like they were being bullied. So, the bill went down, and then I made the motion to reconsider the bill, and that motion failed, which means you can't reconsider it again, which that means the bill was dead.
I assume that was a tactical maneuver?
That's an actual term.
Dead. Doubly dead.
Yeah, you can only make the motion to reconsider once. I decided to make a motion to reconsider knowing that it would fail, and then nobody else could make the motion.
And that nobody else can make the motion throughout the rest of this legislative session?
Correct.
They
could discharge it from the committee. So, I mean, technically the bill's not dead. It is stuck in the committee. And if they want to pick that fight with a bill that they obviously don't have support for, they could try to discharge it to the floor. That is, they could do that, but I don't believe they will. Seen no signs of that because the bill doesn't have enough support. That's why it died.
I want to go off the legislative board and onto the judicial board here with the situation with the 91st House of Delegates seat, the former Joe DeSoto seat. He won that race in an election, never actually got to take the seat, and is currently on home confinement. Can we get an update from what you understand now, Mike?
Yeah, first, okay, I'll go through the timeline a little bit. So we filed, our first suit, which named the speaker in the legislature for illegally and unconstitutionally creating the vacancy. They did so through a resolution, which there is no precedent for that. That, I believe, is illegal to just, whatever it is, you don't like the outcome of an election or for whatever reason, you can't just pass a resolution to create a vacancy. That's a big issue I have. With that, I think it sets a really dangerous precedent. If the legislature can just take a vote to create a vacancy, there is an expulsion process. They didn't do that. Because they wanted to ignore the section of code where it says that the vacancy would be filled by the party the office holder was immediately prior to the vacancy. Now, there's a bill that has moved. I voted for it, spoke to it, that would reverse the law that was passed back in 2018 that would go back to the will of the voters and said that the vacancy would be filled by the party that the office holder was at the time of the election. So they're changing course on that law because it no longer serves their purpose, a law that they passed back in 2018. So I've been consistent on I voted against it in 2018. I voted to reverse it this year, and I hope the bill passes. Where we are on the court proceedings, though, is that we filed another motion against the governor. Well, first, the speaker claimed, asked for an automatic stay using the legislature. It was before the legislature had actually gavelled in, but it's like 30 days prior to the legislature and 30 days after you get this automatic stay. So he was granted an automatic stay. So that case, I believe, is set for May. Then we filed a separate suit just naming the governor. The governor claims used this so we didn't file a 30-day notice, which we feel that if it's a matter that that needs expediency, a matter that needs swift attention like this, that they could drop that 30-day notice requirement. They did not. So far there's been no arguments on the actual merits of the case. It's all just been procedural motions from the governor and the speaker to avoid our day in court because they know we're right.
Go ahead, John.
Well, but the court decided in favor of the plaintiff. No, the defendant. In favor of the Republicans.
No, they didn't. They said that they didn't find it. But no, they threw that case out because of the 30-day notice.
Okay.
We still have a case. So we still have a case alive on this. And I said the important part is how that vacancy was created. And I look forward to our day in court. We can actually discuss the merits of the case and not have people just throw up roadblocks and try to evade the issue based on procedural motions, which is all we've gotten from the speaker and the governor so far, as just playing games with procedural motions instead of actually arguing the merits of the case.
So is there a timeline for that?
I believe it's in May.
Okay.
We will, yeah.
The goal for the Republicans this year, Mike, was to basically run out the clock on the legislative session and then deal with it after the session, correct?
And yeah, because they, I think they incorrectly used the there's a part in code that I don't agree with necessarily, but it's there about this automatic stay. And what that's normally used for is, like, say somebody, we have a lot of attorneys that serve up here. If they have a case, they're able to get that automatic stay to allow them to focus on their work in the legislature and then get that stay until after the legislature adjourns, sine die. I don't think it's in there to allow the legislature, someone in the legislature to avoid the work of the legislature, because that's what this case is about. It's about a resolution that was passed on the first day of the legislature. So,
very good.
And technically, we weren't. It could have been taken care of during that time between day 0 and day 1, because in a year after you elect, the executive branch, there's that month delay. That's why we're still here. It's almost April.
What are your thoughts on the Senate bill that will give the legislature some power over the state education, Board of Education and policies and such? And I understand there's a similar bill in the House as well that will also attempt to tackle this. Where are you on that?
Well, I'm with the majority of West Virginians who voted that down just 3 years ago. They thought it was overreach from the legislature, and it was pretty soundly voted down by the people. It was on the ballot. So I think if you want to amend the Constitution, and I told Delegate Hornby this, who's the lead sponsor of it, if you want to amend the Constitution, put it back on the ballot and let the people vote on it again. But I think it's wrong for the legislature to ignore the vote of the people, ignore that that amendment was Amendment 4, I believe, in 22 that went down, and to just pass legislation that goes against the will of the people.
Well, let's talk about the actual content of not the procedural part, but just the content of it. What are your thoughts about the legislature being in charge or having input to the Board of Education?
Oversight, at least.
Oversight.
No, I agree with the Constitution and the will of the voters that it should not be.
Were you pleasantly surprised to see the Senate Education Chairwoman share your opinion on that?
Yes, I was pleasantly surprised. And I think that her opinion is based on we just voted on it. Why are we ignoring the will of the voters?
Yes.
That's a pretty strong argument. We live in a democracy, and we just had direct democracy on that particular issue just a few short years ago, and the amendment failed, and we should respect that. There are a lot of elections that have taken place in West Virginia that I didn't necessarily like the outcome of, but I accept it and move on. I would suggest that those who didn't like the outcome of that particular election should accept the will of the voters and move on, instead of trying to do an end around on the will of the people by passing a bill that just flies in the face of a vote that was just taken in 2022.
Republicans are also working on some bills, both in the House and the Senate, that would provide effectively locality pay. It would adjust pay based on a housing index for the county that you live in. What do you think about this, Mike?
I think that's another bad idea, poorly thought out idea. I think some of the parts of the state where we really need teachers are some of the poorest parts of the state. I think it would create more problems than it addresses. And I understand the issues in your I understand the issues in your part of the state where you're losing teachers to Maryland and Virginia. Well, we need to raise our pay across the board so that makes that job more attractive in West Virginia, period, not just in parts of West Virginia. But there's a lot of places in southern West Virginia or other parts of the state that are struggling where we also need teachers. And I think that would cause an outward migration of teachers from those areas and create even more vacancies in the places where we need folks the most. So I'm against that as well.
But in those areas, $50,000 salary to be a teacher in an area where the housing prices are so low, that's living pretty high.
Well, I think it's a profession that we should respect, and no matter where they live.
Oh, of course.
I think we should. Yeah, I think we should give across the board raises to teachers to attract people into that field. So no, I don't agree with that bill. I think it would create more problems than it would solve.
Does that bill address just teachers, or is that for all state workers, Mike?
That's a good question, and I haven't seen the bill in committee yet, and I haven't really dug into it. I've just heard it's been over in the Senate. In principle, I don't like the idea of creating these different classes of teachers like that. We
had Delegate Hornby on earlier this morning. I forgot to ask him that question. That would be good to know, because that would also change the fiscal note on that bill as well.
Yeah, I have to look at it. We haven't taken it up in committee yet, but I'm sure that we will at some point.
I know the Republicans have been attempting to address some of the child welfare issues in the state too. Mike, your interest in some of those bills?
Yeah, I think some of those, there was a bill yesterday that had a lot of debate, and I was glad we spent a lot of time debating it. I'd rather spend time debating that than debating whether or not you can stand up on a motorcycle or some of the other ridiculous, whether or not you can, track a deer with a drone. All those great bills that they've already we've spent time debating so far this year. But yeah, we did spend some time on a bill yesterday, and I think I was open-minded. I wasn't sure how I was going to vote on it. I wound up voting for it, and gave the benefit of the doubt some of the members who have opened up their homes to these children and have been more involved with the foster care system. But I still think it's more of tinkering around the edges, where we really need to address more the root cause of why there are so many children who find themselves in this predicament to begin with. But I do support legislation that does get to what the root causes are.
Yeah, so let's go to those root causes. I have just about a minute and a half left. Do you divide those over job opportunities and drug use in the state, or are there other factors as well?
I know a lot of it has to do with the drug epidemic in this state. I think that's mainly what's driving a lot of it. I think, once again, it is also a problem with supporting those types of people who work in that field as well. There's not enough people who want to work, be underpaid as a CPS worker, a job that you often take home with you, a job where I imagine you see things that you just can't forget when you're going to sleep at night. And by the way, we're going to raise your insurance premiums on you without giving you a raise. Yeah, it's hard to get people to work in those fields. But I'd say the underlying issues mainly are as the drug epidemic and what it's done to this state. Yeah.
30 seconds. Final word is
They
yours,
need
Michael.
more help for families to begin with, so they don't find themselves in this situation. But I think that the governor has some real misplaced priorities this year. He has been solely focused on culture war issues that seek to divide, and we found a lot of these aren't very popular. A lot of his two of his major pieces of legislation have already gone down. And he puts out a statement saying he's going to call us back in all summer. He needs to work on his people skills and maybe listen more to the people when he's introducing this type of legislation.
Thank you,
we
Michael.
need to focus on what the real issues in this state.
Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me on.